Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of textual study of the Quran. We had finished discussing verses 75 to 90 of Surah al-Nisa in our previous session, and today we will its literal and idiomatic translation. This passage from Surah al-Nisa obviously is right in the middle of the surah, in which there is a whole bunch of things being discussed regarding the hypocrites and the plight of the weak Muslims. And in fact, this plight of the weak Muslims is exactly what is under discussion in verse 75, from which we will start off our idiomatic and literal translation. So it begins like this: وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ wa and ma not, lakum for you, la not, tuqatiluna that you fight, fi in sabil way, Allah God. So wama lakum la would be that what is over you, or what is regarding you, or what has come over you, that you do not fight for the way of God, or you do not fight in the cause of God. So sabilillah actually means in the way of God, and idiomatically it means the cause of God. So wal mustazrafin, and the weak, and it's like saying that you do not fight for the cause of God and for the weak. Al mustazafin, weak, min al rijal, from among men, one nisa, and women, wal wildan, and children. Allazina, those who, yaquluna, said, Rabbana, our Lord, akhrijna, take us out, min, from, hazihil qarya, this settlement, az-zalim ahluha, whose dwellers are oppressive, wa waj'al, and make, lana, from yourself, waj'al lana, make for ourselves, milladunka, from yourself, waliya, a helper, wa waj'al, of course it is repeated, waj'al lana, and make for us, milladunka, from your own self, nasira, someone who will help. So wali and nasir, they are close in their translation. So wali, of course, can be translated as a friend, as someone who is concerned about other people, and nasir also is very similarly translated as a person who helps. So waj'al lana min ladunka waliya would mean, and make for us from your own self, make for us from your own self a friend, a wali, and make for us from your own self a helper. So min ladunka, from your own self, referring to God. So God, from your own self, please make for us a wali, a person who is our friend, a person who is our affectionate to us, and who is our helper. Allazina amanu yuqatiluna fi sabilillah. Allazina, those who, amanu, professed faith, yuqatiluna, they fight, fi sabilillah, in the way of God. So those who have believed, they fight in the way of God. So idiomatically it would be, those who have believed fight in the way of God. Wa, and allazina kafaru, and those who have disbelieved, yuqatiluna, they fight, fi sabilit taghut, in the way of rebellious people, in the way of their own leaders. So this is like a parallel sentence. You can see how exactly the words are placed and positioned to convey meanings which are parallel and opposite as well. So allazina yuqatiluna fi sabilillah, and allazina kafaru yuqatiluna fi sabilit taghut. So those who have believed, they fight for the cause of God, and those who have disbelieved, they fight for the cause of rebellious people. And then it is said, faqatilu, fa, therefore, qatilu, you fight. Awliya, awliya is the plural of wali, and wali means friend. Ash-shaytan, Satan. So you fight with the friends of Satan. Inna, indeed. Kaid, kaid means a scheme or a plot. Ash-shaytan, of Satan. Kana is za'ifa, something very frail. So indeed, the plot of Satan, indeed, the scheme of Satan is very weak. Kana za'ifa. Alam tara ila allazina qila lahum kuffu aydiyakum wa aqimus salata wa atuz zakat. Alam tara, have you not seen? Alam tara, have you not seen? Ila allazina, towards those people, or in fact you can translate it as, have you not seen those people, qila lahum, to whom it was said, when it was said to them, Kuffu aydiyakum. So kuffu means withhold. Do not in any way take the initiative. Kuffu aydiyakum. So aydiyakum, your hands. Withhold your hands means that do not fight. Do not take the initiative. Kuffu aydiyakum. Wa, and aqimus salat. Adhere to the prayer. Wa, and atuz zakat. Pay zakat. Fa, therefore, lamma, when, kotiba alayhim, made mandatory upon them, al qital, qital of course means jihad or fight or war. So when war was made mandatory upon them, iza, you can see, fariqum minhum, a group from among them, fariq group, minhum from among them, a group from among them, yakhshawna, yakhshawna means fear, an-nasa, people, ka, as if, khashya, fear, Allah, God. So when war was ordained upon them, when war was made mandatory upon them, you could see that there was a group from among them who feared people as if God should be feared. I mean, they feared people in the same way as God should be feared. Aw ashadda kashya. Aw, or ashadda, even more. Khashya, fear. So they feared people the way God is feared, or even more than that. Aw ashadda, or more than that. Aw ashadda khashya, more or more fear. Wa, and qalu, they said, Rabbana, our Lord, lima, why, katabta, you have ordained, alayna, upon us, al-qital, war. So they said, Lord, why have you ordained war upon us, or why have you made war mandatory upon us? Laula, if not, akhartana, you could have given us respite, ila, towards ajalin qareeb, a small respite. So why is it that you did not give us a little respite, which means that little more respite? Kul, say, mata'ud dunya, the provision of this world, the assets of this world, qaleel, are less. The assets of this world are less. Wa al-akhirah, and the hereafter, khayrun, better, liman ittaqa, liman, for those, ittaqa, who fear. So the answer is, tell them that mata'ud dunya qaleel, the provision of this world is qaleel, the provision of this world is very little, and the akhirat on, and the hereafter is khair, is better, liman ittaqa, for those who have fear, liman, for those, ittaqa, who have fear, wa, and la, not, tuzlamuna, oppression done, fatila, in the slightest way, and no oppression shall be done upon you in the slightest way. Aynama takunu, yudrikkumul maut, aynama, wherever, takunu, you are, aynama takunu, wherever you are, yudrik al maut, yudrik will means excess you, yudrik is excess, kum is you. Yudrikkum would mean excess you, al maut, death. So wherever you are, death will excess you. Wherever you are, death will overcome you. Walau kuntum, even if you are, fi, in, buruj. Buruj means fortresses. And of course, it's the plural of burj. Mushayyada. Mushayyada means strong. And even if you are in strong fortresses, even if you are protected or shielded by strong fortresses, even then death will overcome you, death will overtake you wherever you are. Aynama takunu yudrikkumul maut would mean that wherever you are, death will overtake you, even if you are in strong fortresses. So there is no escaping death. Wa, and, in, if, tusibhum, reaches them, hasana, something good. And if something good reaches them, yaqulu, they say, hazihi, this, min indillah, is from God. Min, from, indillah, from God. Wa, and, in, if, tusibhum, reaches them, sayyi'atun, something evil. Yaqulu, they say, hazihi, this, min, from, indik, from yourself. So what is implied here is that when something good reaches them, they say that this is from God. And when something evil reaches them, they say that this is your own fault. This is from yourself, referring to the Prophet. Kul, say, kullun, everything, min, from, indillah, God. Say that everything is from God. Famali haula'il qawm. So what has come or what has overcome al qawm, these people? Haulai, these al qawm people, for what has overcome these people? La yakaduna, they are not in any way yafkahuna, understanding hadith, any conversation or anything. So what has overcome them? What has the matter with them, with these people, that they are not able to? So yakaduna would be not able to. Yafkahuna, understand, that they are not able to understand haditha, any conversation, any speech, any statement. Ma asabaka, ma, that, asabaka, reaches you, min hasanatin, from among, hasana, what is virtuous. So if anything virtuous reaches you, if anything virtuous comes across you, fa minallah, fa, therefore, minallah, it is from God. So whenever something good reaches you, it is from God. Va, and, ma asabaka, whatever reaches you, min sayyi'atin, from evil. Whatever reaches you from evil, famin nafsik, it is from your own self. Famin, fa, therefore, min, from, nafsik, your own self. Wa arsalnaka, wa, and, arsalnaka, we have sent you, linnase, for people, rasula, as a messenger. We have sent you for people as a messenger. Wa kafa billahi shahida, wa, and, kafa billahi, enough is God, shahida, as a witness, as an evidence. So God is sufficient as a witness. Man yuti'ir rasula faqad ata' Allah. Man, he, yuti' is obedient, a rasul, to the messenger. He who is obedient to the messenger, faqad, then in fact, ata'a, he is obedient, Allah, God. So in fact he is obedient to God. He who is obedient to the messenger is in fact someone who is obedient to God. Wa, and, man, he who, tawalla, turns away or turned away, fa, therefore, ma, not, arsalnaka, you have been sent, alayhim, on them, hafiza, as a keeper or as a guardian. So he who obeys the messenger has in fact obeyed God, and he who has turned away, then you have not been sent to him as a guardian, or to them as a guardian, which means that it's not your responsibility that you force them. وَيَقُولُونَ طَاعَةً, wa, and, يَقُولُونَ, they say, ta'a, obedience. And this is how, of course, at times when we stress something, that we leave out the opening part of the sentence. Actually, what is meant here is وَيَقُولُونَ طَاعَةً, referring to the fact that obedience is yours only, but the portion yours only is omitted, and all the stress is then directed towards obedience. So literally it would mean, and they say obedience, and they say obedience, and what is implied here is that obedience is for you. Fa, therefore, iza, when, barazu min indik, they turn away from your presence, they leave your presence. Bayyata ta'ifatum minhum, bayyata ta'ifa, bayyata ta'ifatum minhum would mean that they do something which is not what they say. Bayyata ta'ifatum minhum would mean that they confer, that a group of from among them says something, ghaira, except, allazi, that which you said. So, but as soon as they come out of your presence, faiza barazu min indika, as soon as they come out of their presence, a group from them, ta'ifatum minhum, what it says something, bayyata, it says something which is totally different from what was said to you. Ghayr allazi taqul, which was, it actually tells them to do something otherwise, something which was not said to them. Wa, and, Allah, God, yaktubu, writes, ma, that, yubayyitun, what they say or what they whisper. So God writes what they whisper. Fa, therefore, a'riz, turn away, anhum, from them. So turn away from them. Wa, and, tawakkal, trust, Allah, on, Allah, God. So trust God. Wa, and, kafa, sufficient, billahi, God, wakila, as your wakil, as your helper. So sufficient is God to trust also. We can also translate this that uh, trust God only, and sufficient is God as someone that you can trust. Afala, so do not yatadabbaruna, these people reflect al Quran on the Quran. So why do not these people reflect on the Quran? Why do these people not reflect on the Quran? Va, and law, if, kana, was, min indi, from ghairillah, someone other than God, la wajadu, they would have found, fihi, in it, ikhtilafa. Ikhtilaf means discrepancy. Kathira, many. So why do they not ponder on the Quran? Afala yatadabbarun al Quran. Why do they not think on the Quran? Why do they not reflect on the Quran? Because walau kana min indillah, had it been from someone other than God, law kana min indi ghairillah, had it been someone other than God, la wajadu, they would have found fihi, in it, ikhtilafan kathira, a lot of discrepancies, a lot of contradictions. Wa, and Iza, when Ja'ahum, comes to them, Amrum min al news regarding peace, Aw, or Al Khawf, fear, or fear. So when comes to them some piece of news regarding peace or regarding fear, Aza'u, they spread, bihi, it, they spread it. So it's like instead of verifying it, they just spread it. Wa, and law, if, rudduhu, they would have returned it, ila, towards a rasul, the messenger. So in other words, had they returned it to the messenger, or if they had presented it to the messenger, wa, and ila, towards ulil amr. So ulil amr means those in authority. So had, instead of spreading it, had they turned it or had they presented it to the messenger or to those in authority, ila rasul wa ila ulul amr, and those in authority, minhum, from among them, la alima hullazina yastambitunahu minhu, la alimahu, they would have known, allazina, those who, yastambitunahu minhu, who have the power of deduction. So yustambitunahu istimbat, which means who have the ability to get to the crux of an issue. So those who would have the ability to reach the crux of an issue would have known the reality. La alimahu, they would have known whether this piece of news is correct or not correct. Wa, and laula, if not, fadlullah, God's blessing, alaykum, upon you, had it not been the blessings, had not the blessings of God been upon you, wa, and rahmatuhu, rahma, mercy, who, his, and his mercy, lattaba'tum, you would have definitely followed, ash-shaytan, Satan, illa, except, qalila, very few. So had not the fazl and rahmah of God been upon you, had not the blessing and mercy of God been upon you, most of you would have followed Satan. So in other words, all but very few of you would have followed Satan, would mean that had this been the case, had not the mercy and God's grace not been upon you, all but a few of you would have followed Satan, would mean that everyone except a few, only a few would have been left, and most of you would have followed Satan. فَقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, fa, therefore, qatil, fight, fi, in, sabilillah, way of God. So fight in the way of God, or fight for the cause of God, la, not, tukallafu, you are responsible, illa, except, nafsaka, your own self. La tukallafu illa nafsaka would mean, and you are not responsible except for your own self. In other words, you are only responsible for your own self. Wa, and harridil mu'mineen. So harrid means to urge, al mu'minina, the believers. So the Prophet is being told, urge the believers. And asallahu, asalla means it may well be God. Asa, it may well be God. It may well be that God, that an yakuffa. So yakuffa means break, so to break. Ba'sa means the power. Allazina kafaru, of those who have believed. Which mean, so idiomatically it would mean that if you rouse the believers, if you urge the believers, if you incite the believers, it may well be that God breaks the power of those who have disbelieved. An yakuffa breaks. Ba'sa, the power. Al-lazina, those who kafaru, who have disbelieved. So if you arouse the believers, then as a help from God, he will break the might, he will break the power of the disbelievers. Wa, and Allah, God, ashaddu, strong, ba'san, in power, wa, and ashaddu, strong, tankila, in taking punishment, in exacting punishment. So, and God is ashaddu ba'san, and God is very, very strong. Wa, and ashaddu tankila, and he is very, very revengeful, or he makes an example out of those people and gives them terrible punishment. So nakal is basically the word which means to make an example out of someone. Ashaddu tankila would mean that he punishes someone in a way that becomes exemplary. Man, he. Yashfara. Yashfara, shafaratan would mean he who supports. Shafaratan, a good. Shafaratan hasana, in fact, is one word. He who supports something good. Yashfa supports. Shafaratan hasana, something good. Yakun is lahu, for him. Nasibum minha, a share from that. So he who supports a good, he will receive a share from that. Nasib, share, minha, from that. Wa, and man yashfa shafa'atan sayyatan, and he who supports an evil. Yashfa shafa'atan sayya. Sayya means evil. An evil support. Yakun lahu, it will be for him. Kiflum minha, a share from it. So he will receive a share from that evil support. Wa, and Kanallahu, God is ala, on, kulle, every, shay'in, thing, muqita, powerful. And God is powerful over everything, or God has power over everything. Wa, and iza, when, huyyitum, you greet bitahiyyatin, someone with a greeting. Huyyitum, you greet someone bitahiyyatin, with a greeting. Of course, the greeting here refers to salam. Fahayyu bi ahsani minha. Let me just correct myself. Wa iza huyyitum would mean that when someone says greeting to you, huyyitum greets you bitahiyyatin, with a greeting. When someone greets you with a greeting, fahayyu, you greet him back. Bi ahsani minha, from what is better than that. Aw rudduha, or in the same way. So, in other words, when someone greets you with a greeting, you also greet that person in a better way, or even better than that. Aw rudduha, or in the same way. You greet him in a better way, or at least in the same way as that person greeted you. Inna Allah, inna, indeed, Allah, God, kana, is, ala, on, kulli, everything, every, shay'in, thing, hasiba, who takes account. So indeed, God is someone who takes account of everything. Allahu la ilaha illahu, God, except whom there is no deity. La yajma'annakum, he will gather you definitely. Ila, towards, yawmil qiyamah, the hereafter. In other words, he is going to take all of you to the hereafter. La, not raib, doubt, fihi, in it, about which there is no doubt. A day of judgment about which there is no doubt. Wa, and man, he, asdaqu, more truthful, minallahi, than God, hadisa, about what is said. So who is more truthful than God? Who has said anything more truthful than God, or who can say anything more truthful than God? Man asdaqu, who can be more truthful than God regarding speech, regarding what is said. فَمَا لَكُمْ فِي الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِئَتَيْنِ. فَمَا لَكُمْ, it's like a idiomatic word which means what has come over you, what has happened to you. Fil munafiqina, regarding the munafiqeen, regarding the hypocrites. Fi'atain, that you have become two. That what has come over you, what has happened to you, that about the munafiqeen, about the hypocrites, you are split into two groups. So fi'atun means group and fi'atain means two groups. So why is it that you behave differently regarding the munafiqeen, and you have two different opinions, or you behave as two different groups? Wa, and Allah, God, Arkasahum. So arkasahum mean God has turned them back. Bima, because kasabu, what they have earned. So God has turned them back because of what they have earned. In other words, God has relegated them back because of what evil they have done. Aturiduna, will you? Turiduna, want. An, that. Tahdu, you give guidance. Man, to him. Allah, whom God has misguided. So, do you want to guide that person whom God has misguided? In other words, whom God as a punishment has misguided. Would you like to guide that person? Aturiduna, would you like to? Antahdu, to guide. Man, he who, adallallah, has been misguided by God. So, would you like to guide that person who has been misguided by God? Wa, and man, he, yudlilillahu. So, man yudlilillah means he who God has made misguided, or he whom God has led astray. Va, and man, he, yudlilillahu, God has led astray. Fa, therefore, lan, certainly not. Tadida, you will find. Lahu, for him. Sabila, any way out. So, those whom God leads astray, or he who has been led astray by God, you will not find for him any route, any escape, anything that can lead them out of this misguidance, which has been, of course, imposed on them as a punishment. Wa, and Waddu means they want. Law, that if. Takfuruna, you disbelieve. So they want that if you disbelieve, kama kafaru, the way they themselves have disbelieved. So, in other words, they want that you also disbelieve the way they themselves have disbelieved. Waddu law takfuruna, they want that you disbelieve kama kafru, the way they have disbelieved. Fatakununa, so you will become sawa, equal. So, if they want that you also disbelieve the way they have disbelieved, so you will become equal. Fala, therefore not. Tattakhizu, become. Minhum, from them. Awliya, friends. So do not make from among them friends. Awliya is the plural of wali, and wali means friend. So do not make friends with them. Hatta, until. Yuhajiru, they migrate. Fi, in sabilillah, the way of God. So do not make friends with them until they migrate for the cause of God. Fa, and. Fa is therefore in, if. Tawallaw, they turn away. فَخُذُوهُمْ, فَخُذُوهُمْ, seize them. وَقْتُلُوهُمْ, and kill them. حَيْسُ, wherever. وَجَدْتُمُوهُمْ, you find them. So if they turn away, then seize them and kill them wherever you find them. Wala, and not. تَتَّخِذُوا مِنْهُمْ, make from among them. Waliya, friend. Wa, and. La, not helper. And do not make from among them any friend or any helper. Wala nasira. Illa allazina yasiluna ila qawmin bainakum wa bainahum misaq. Illa, except. Allazina, those who. Yasiluna ila qawmin bainakum wa bainahum misaq. Yasiluna means joined. Ila qawmin, towards a nation. Bainakum, between you. Wa bainahum, and between them. Misaq, there is a covenant. So what is being said here, that except if they join a nation between whom you and they have a misaq, they have a covenant, they have a treaty, or ja'ukum, they come to you, hasirat suduruhum. So hasirat suduruhum would mean that they have just lost any power. Hasirat suduruhum, which means that their hearts have just become devoid of any courage. Of what? An yuqatilukum, to fight with you. So they come to you in a situation that they have lost their heart to fight against you. Aw yuqatilu qawmahum, or fight against their own people. They do not have the courage to fight against you or with their own people. So wa, and. Law, if. Sha'allahu, God wanted. Lasallatahum, he would have made them roused, he would have roused them against you. Lasallatahum alaykum, or he would have deputed them against you, which means that he would have really made them overcome you. Falaqatalukum, and so therefore it means that they too would have waged war against you. So, had God wanted, He would have made them powerful over you. Sallatahum alaikum, He would have made them powerful over you. Falaqatalukum, and they would have also fought with you. Fa in. Fa therefore, in is if. I'tazalukum. So it would be read as fa in i'tazalukum. But if they keep away from you, if they avoid you, fa lam, and do not yuqatilukum, and do not fight with you. So if they avoid you or they stay clear of you and do not fight with you, wa and alqaw, give ilaykum, towards you, assalam, peace, and they give peace to you, which means they offer peace to you. Fa therefore, ma not, ja'alallahu, God has made, lakum, for you, alayhim, against them, sabila, any way. So if they desist from you, if they abstain from you and do not fight you, and in fact offer you peace, alkaw ilaykum as-salama, then God has not given you any authority over them. Fama ja'alallahu lakum alayhim sabila, then you have no way against them, which means that you just cannot take any action against them. So with this we come to an end to the literal and idiomatic translation of the portion that we studied last time. If you have any questions regarding what we have just covered, please go ahead and ask them. And once we are through with these questions, then we'll start with the next passage.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our first question comes from Shaban Ansari. Please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। यहाँ तागूत जो है वो शैतान के लिए इस्तेमाल होता है, यहाँ पर किसके लिए इस्तेमाल हो रहा है आपने शायद बताया होगा।
Here it is referring to the rebellious leaders. A taghut is referring to their own rebellious leaders. So it's not always that it is used for Satan. It's the context tells us, but primarily here it is used for their rebellious leaders,
Okay,
who themselves were following Satan.
Yes, यानी शैतान के साथ ही एक तरह से।
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next question asks, what type of oppression did Quraysh use to inflict upon the people, particularly the weak, women, and children that the verses 57 to 56 are referring to?
Obviously, this is something not referring to the Quraysh. Remember, this is Surah al-Nisa, which is being discussed, and this is the oppression that was let loose by the Arabs on the Muslims as a whole. So those who were in Mecca and had yet to migrate, they were also persecuted, and others who had migrated were also put to this test, because all of them had not yet fully come to Medina, and they were like in this bordering areas. So the persecution that was let loose was, of course, very horrific. They would be punished very badly. They would be severely beaten, and some of them would be even put to death. And that death would normally result because of that severe torture that they would go through. So it would be like corporal torture, in which they would be given bruises to their body, they would be injured, they would be wounded, and they would be terribly treated.
Thank you very much. Just follow up on that. So, because of this torture, then is it not that if believers are allowed to fight for oppression, then people may create anarchy, like the faction in Parachinar will wage against the other ones on the basis of
in order to safeguard that is why people are being told that whoever are being persecuted, they should first migrate and come to Medina, so that the stronghold is set up and established there, and then war will be waged against the people who are persecuting them. So that is precisely what they are being told, that they should, if you look at verse 74 that we studied in our previous session, it says that why don't you migrate for the cause of God to an area which welcomes you, where you can freely practice your religion. So these people, some of them were not migrating because they had ties with the hypocrites, and they had ties with the disbelievers. So they were told that they have to migrate and come to the Darul Islam, which means the land of Islam, the Medina, so that now all Muslims can be at one place, which would also be their state, the country that they would be living in and forming their own polity, and then from there they would wage war if needed.
Thank you very much. Salman Aziz, please go ahead.
So if the people are not coming to Darul Islam, then doesn't Ayat 75 clearly guides or compels the Muslims of today in general and the governments in particular to undertake the jihad for the oppressed Palestinians?
No, actually, what is being said here is that first they have to, if they are living in a place where they are being oppressed, and there is also a place in which they are welcomed. So at the moment we are not applying it to our current circumstances. That first, let us first understand it in principle. So the principle is that you have a place to migrate, and wherever you are being asked to migrate, the place is welcoming you so that you can live there in peace and also not become an economic burden. And at the same time, I mean, the nature of that oppression or that persecution is such that you're not being able to practice your own religion openly. So if these two conditions are met, then it becomes incumbent upon people to migrate from that place and to go to a place where they can practice Islam and safeguard themselves from any persecution.
Iman Aziz, you can ask your follow-up.
So my second question is regarding the ayat saying that where the hypocrites should be killed, sir. So I think it was should be close to the Imam Hujjat time, that is close to the conquest of Makkah, sir.
Yes,
But it is
yes.
related to Hijrah, so it seems to be a quite early thing to do the Imam Hujjat.
No, you see, this is not just the reason of Itmam Hujjat regarding the fact that they are not the Hujjat has not been completed upon them, or the truth has not been conveyed to them. Basically, migrating from the land of persecution to the land of Islam had become a standard for them to accept if they would like to make sides and side by the Islamic forces. So for them, it was like a trial and a test. If they did not come in spite of being welcomed, then it only meant that their ties which they had with the disbelievers were so strong that they did not want to undo those ties. So that was the reason that this has been said, that now this is like a battle, or this is like a selection that you have to make. You are people who are lying, or you are living in a Darul Kufr, or a place in which you can no longer practice your religion freely. And if you still don't migrate from that place, then this is what is going to be your fate. So remember, these are people of the book, and this is like the period in Medina, which is the middle Medinan period, I would say. And the truth had been unveiled to them. And so not only the truth had been unveiled to them, at the same time, remember that they were also not migrating for the cause that they held themselves, they held dear to themselves as well.
Iman, did that answer your question? You
Sir, I just want to understand, sir, that to my understanding, it was that the Surah Tawbah is dealing with the Imam Hujjat, and it is quite later part from the Hijrah time frame. So Surah Nisa is just dealing with the Hijrah and doing the Imam Hujjat. So this is something new for me.
Right, of course.
And
I mean, the reason that I do understand what you're talking about. The reason that this they're being told this is because of the fact that choosing between Darul Islam and Darul Kufr was also something that had become a sign for them to remain Muslims or not. Because you see, mostly these were people who were hypocrites, who were trying to stay back. They still had ties with non-Muslims or with disbelievers, and they had their own agenda as well. So basically, they are being told that this is something that if you don't do, it's not just on the reason or the pretext of Itmam al-Hujjah that this has been allowed to them. This is like high treason as well. I mean, some more element has been added to their own attitude, which has made them. It has made them succumb to this whole law of not succumbing or not accepting religion as the final authority. So remember, it's not just the law of Itmam al-Hujjah that warrants the final killing of people or give them this warning. At times when you don't migrate at the right time, and the truth has also been unveiled to you, and you have ties with disbelievers, and as a result of those ties you are causing dissension. So this is something that becomes a cause of high treason against the state, and the punishment of high treason is also the same as that of Itmam al-Hujjah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, why is it that despite Itmam al-Hujjah, hypocrites were not wiped out?
Because it does seem that if you study Surah Tawbah, that by that time, they still were not exposed fully, and God gave them that liberty, or that I would say concession, in which some of the things that they needed to do in order to make themselves exposed and become worthy of that punishment, that never took place. And the blatant disbelievers, who were of course the kuffar, the mushrikun, and among the people of the book, it was they who had come forward and exposed themselves, and as a result they faced the music. As for the hypocrites, although of course everything was boiling below the surface, but it does seem that they did not come out in the open, and hence the veil that was stretched over them, it remained intact until the death of the Prophet.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the questions for now.
Okay, so now we take up the next passage, which starts off with verse 91. So it says, سَتَجِدُونَ آخَرِينَ يُرِيدُونَ أَن يَأْمَنُوكُمْ وَيَأْمَنُوا قَوْمَهُمْ كُلَّمَا رُدُّوا إِلَى الْفِتْنَةِ أُرْكِسُوا فِيهَا فَإِن لَّمْ يَعْتَزِلُوكُمْ وَيُلْقُوا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَمَ وَيَكُفُّوا أَيْدِيَهُمْ فَخُذُوهُمْ وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ وَأُولَٰئِكُمْ جَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانًا مُبِينًا. So it says that besides them you will see some others also who want to make peace with you and also with their own people. But whenever they are called to sedition, they plunge into it headlong. So sedition, of course, is fitna, and that is what is being said here. That as you see them, that they would like, you will see that there are some others, yuriduna ya'manukum, who want to make peace with you and also with their own people. But whenever they are called to sedition, kullama ruddu ilal fitna, that whenever they are called to fitna, whenever they are called to such a trial, they plunge into it headlong. Urkisu fiha. فَإِلَّمْ يَعْتَزِلُوكُمْ. So if they do not keep their distance from you, وَيُلْقُوا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَمَ, and also not offer you peace, وَيَكُفُّوا أَيْدِيَهُمْ, and do not withhold their hands, which means that they come out in the open and fight. فَخُذُوهُمْ, then you get hold of these people. وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ, and kill them wherever you find them. وَأُولَٰئِكُمْ جَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانًا مُبِينًا. These are the people against whom we have given you an absolute authority. So as an answer to your question also, Salman Aziz, that you just asked, you can see how the Quran has said that there are people who create this fitna, who whenever they are invited to sedition, they plunge into headlong. So basically it does seem that the death punishment or the infliction of death upon them is not merely because of the Itmamul Hujjah rule, it is also because of this sedition, it's also because of the fact that they have committed this high treason. So وَقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُم, that you kill them wherever you find them. وَأُولَٰئِكُمْ جَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ سَبِيلًا, and it is these people against whom we have given you a sabil, sultan mubina, we have given you a clear authority. So sultan actually means reasoning and argumentation, and also we know that it also means that we have given you the prerogative or the authority to against such people, that you can raise your hands against such people. Now we come to a part of the Quran in which if you are guilty of killing someone by mistake is covered, and right after that we'll also see another part of the Quran in which killing someone with intention, with calculated intent, is also discussed. So it says, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ أَن يَقْتُلَ مُؤْمِنًا إِلَّا خَطَأً. But caution should not be thrown to the wind, because it is unlawful for a Muslim to kill a Muslim except if it happens by accident. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ أَن يَقْتُلَ مُؤْمِنًا إِلَّا خَطَأً. It is unlawful for a Muslim to kill a Muslim except if it happens by khata, it happens by mistake, it happens by an accident. وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا, and وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ وَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ إِلَّا أَن يَصَّدَّقُوا. And he who kills a believer accidentally must free one Muslim slave and pay diyat to his family members except if they forgive him. إِلَّا أَن يَصَّدَّقُوا, except if they forgive him. فَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ عَدُوٍّ لَكُمْ وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. Then, if the victim is a Muslim belonging to a people who are enemies with you, freeing of a Muslim slave is enough. وَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ, and if he belongs to an ally, diyat shall also be given to his heirs. Diyatun musallamatun, it should be handed over to the heirs, ila ahlihi, to them. وَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ, and you shall also have to set free a Muslim slave. So raqaba literally means the neck, and mu'mina of course refers to Muslim. So raqabatin mu'mina means you have to set free a Muslim slave. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ, then he who does not have a slave must fast 2 consecutive months. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ, he who does not have a slave to set free, he must fast for 2 consecutive months. Tawbatan min Allah, this is a way from God to seek pardon as a special favor from God. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا, and God is knowledgeable and wise. وَمَنْ يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمْ, however, he who intentionally kills a believer, his punishment is hell. فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمْ خَالِدًا فِيهَا, he will remain in it forever. وَغَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ, and the wrath and the curse of God, غَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَلَعَنَهُ, and the wrath and curse of God will be on him. وَأَعَدَّ لَهُ عَذَابًا عَظِيمًا, and he has prepared for him a great doom. So just to go back on this verse, which actually spells out the law of unintentional murder, that if a person is guilty of unintentional murder, then the Quran has laid out a complete law that has been that has been actually mentioned in these verses, and it also tells us that this law has a very, very important aspect, and that is what we call as maruf in the case of diyat, which means that whenever there is some expiation, which means that there is some forgiveness, then diyat has to be paid, and that diyat has to be paid according to the maruf, which is according to the custom of the society. Having said that, let us now take a look at the law itself, which is found in these verses. So, وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ وَدِيَّةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ. From here it is evident that if the murdered person is a Muslim citizen of a Muslim state, or if he is Muslim but belongs to a nation with which a treaty has been concluded, because you see the words are فَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ عَدُوٍّ لَكُمْ وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ. So what is said is that if the murdered person is a Muslim citizen of a Muslim state, or if he is not a Muslim but belongs to a nation with which a treaty has been concluded, then it is essential for the murderer who has not been forgiven to pay diyat, to atone for his sin and repent before the Almighty, and also free a Muslim slave. So the words are فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ, you have to also free a Muslim slave. So this is the first statute of this law, that if the murdered person is a Muslim citizen or of an Islamic state, or if he's not a Muslim but he belongs to a nation with which an Islamic state has a treaty. This is the first part. And then the second part is وَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمٍ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُمْ مِيثَاقٌ. So that from here begins the second point. And effectively it says that if the murdered person is a Muslim and belongs to an enemy country, if the murdered person is a Muslim and belongs to the enemy country, the murderer is not required to pay diyat. The murderer is not required to pay diyat. In this case, it is enough that he only free a Muslim slave. So the words are فَدِيَةٌ مُسَلَّمَةٌ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِ, which means that it is enough for him to only free a Muslim slave. In other words, the essential thing is that if a murdered person belongs to Muslims themselves, or he is not a Muslim but he belongs to a nation with whom Muslims have a treaty, so in that case the law would be different. But if the murdered person is a Muslim and he belongs to an enemy country, so in the first case he was a Muslim and he belonged to your own selves, not an enemy country, or with a country with whom Muslims had a treaty. That was the first point. The second point is, if the murdered person is a Muslim and belongs to an enemy country as well, the murderer then is not required to pay diyat, because of course they are at war with each other. Or that can be done is that he only free a Muslim slave. And then it is said that in both these cases, if the criminal does not have a slave to set free, he should consecutively fast for 2 months. So these are the directives as far as unintentional murder is concerned. But it is obvious that the directive of unintentionally injuring someone should also be no different. So of course, if this is something that relates to unintentional murder, and we are not always ending up in murder, we are also at times we end up injuring someone out of mistake, by mistake. So that should also be no different. So in this case also diyat shall have to be paid and fast should have to be observed considering the amount of diyat to be paid. And for example, Ustad Ghamidi has given this example as well, that if a diyat of a certain type of wound is fixed at 1/3 of the diyat of murder, then 20 fasts as atonement shall have to be observed, because totally we have 60 fasts, which are the fasts of 2 months. But for example, if the diyat is 1/3, so in that case, the fasts would also reduce by 1/3. They would be reduced by 1/3, and 1/3 of 60 is 20. So this is like a formula that can be accepted. So we have to understand that as far as the objective is concerned here, the directive of liberating a slave together with diyat and in the absence of a slave fasting for 2 consecutive months is very important. This statement is emphasized and laid out as a procedure because it is said that it is a repentance prescribed by the all-knowing and wise God. So neither should anyone consider it to be a burden nor disobey it. Killing a believer even though by mistake is a great sin. Paying diyat is not enough to expiate the sin. It's not sufficient to atone for the sin, and so therefore a slave shall also be additionally be liberated. And if a person is not able to do so, then he must fast for 2 consecutive months. And in other words, we can see how important this is. And today, because there is no slavery present, so by analogy, if someone who is held in a jail and he needs to be pardoned and he does not have the bail money and he needs that bail money to set himself free, then by analogy we can also regard this to be a penance, a sort of punishment that has to be absolved or taken care of the person. So by analogy, this can also be done. So, but the next thing which is mentioned is something which is pretty much very harsh and also something that has to be followed. It says, وَمَنْ يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمْ خَالِدًا فِيهَا وَغَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَلَعَنَهُ وَأَعَدَّ لَهُ عَذَابًا عَظِيمًا. However, he who intentionally kills a believer, his punishment is hell. He who intentionally kills a believer, his punishment is hell. He shall abide therein forever. The wrath and curse of God are upon him, and he has prepared for him a great tomb. وَلَعَنَهُ وَأَعَدَّ لَهُ عَذَابًا عَظِيمًا. And then, of course, because of the fact that we are discussing qital and jihad and warfare, and during warfare we also know that people will be crossed and they will come across people against whom they will have to fight, but at the same time, in order to save their skin, they might say salam, or of course this could be something, this could not be something of a ploy, it could also be something real. So in that case, what is to be done? So this is what we find in the next verse. It says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu iza zarabtum fi sabilillah fatabayyanu wa la taqulu liman alqa ilaykum as-salama lasta mu'mina tabtaghuna 'arada al-hayati ad-dunya fa 'inda Allahi maghanimu kathira كذلك كنتم من قبل فمن الله عليكم فتبينوا إن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. Believers, when you go out to wage this war for the cause of God, investigate before you take any offensive step, and do not say to those who say salam to you that you are not Muslims. If you seek the sources of this world, then God has for you abundant spoils. Before this you too were in this state, then God did a favor to you. So do investigate, because God fully knows what you do. So of course this is a tendency that has been checked here, that if someone has encountered another person who says that I'm a Muslim, so don't negate him. The Quran says that do not negate him, and because the reason of that negation could be that you think that you have the chance to loot the spoils of war, and therefore if you do not, if you pardon that person, then you will be with foregoing that chance. So God says that this is not correct. The implication is that Muslims should not reject the faith of a person while showing greed for war spoils or war bounty. They have not waged this war to gain victory or war booty. Their purpose is to help oppressed Muslims from the clasp of the cruel enemy. So God has abundant booty for them, as what is said here. فَإِنَّ اللَّهِ مَغَانِمُ كَثِيرًا. So if you want that war booty, then God has plenty of it. But do not kill people because you think that they might be just saving their skin to say Salaam alaikum or telling them that they are Muslims. So wait for that patiently, and that God has abundant beauty for them, and they will soon acquire it. But they must not take a step which endangers the life of a Muslim. So, فَتَبَيَّنُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. And before we go forward, if you have any questions on what we have studied, please raise them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have a long question, but this is referring to Ayah 79. So this is saying that when Allah says that anything good that happens to you is from God and bad is from yourself, then we know that many bad things happen to Prophet. For example, Prophet Muhammad, he had his kids die. They were injured badly. Some of them were killed brutally for other prophets. But all prophets were sinless and innocent. So how come these calamities?
So this is not addressing the Prophet. فَمِن نَفْسِكَ means it is because of you people, because of your own weakness among you. So it's not that the verse is addressing the Prophet, it's addressing the Muslims.
Okay.
It is actually referring to the fact that the weakness that is already found in you, that has become the cause of that evil that has befallen you.
And you mentioned also last class that this was very specific to that certain time.
Yes, and the second thing that I mentioned was that as far as something befalling Muslims of those times are concerned, or the disbelievers of those times is concerned, then that is something that has to be understood, that the people who are in front of the Quran are the Quraysh. They are the direct addressees of a prophet of God, and for them, if they deliberately deny the prophet or that messenger, then they will be taken to task, and therefore if they are punished in this world, it is because of their denial of God's messenger. So that is what is being said here. And if you recall that I had cited this verse of Surah Shura, which says, Ma asabaka min musibatin fabima kasabat aydikum. So whatever calamity befalls you, it is because of the earning of your own hands. So here it actually is referring to the Quraysh, that the calamity that is going to they're going to encounter, they might face, is because of their own doing. So that this has a very particular context, and if you don't understand the context, we will end up generalizing that verse and interpreting it to mean that whatever evil befalls us is because of our own bad deeds. So that is not the case in the post-prophetic era. So this is a verse that is specifically mentioning people who are the addressees of the prophets of God, and in spite of that, they fully know what the truth is, but then they have a different opinion of the truth, or they actually deny the truth.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, the punishment of intentional murder is eternal hell. This is in contrast to a hadith narrative which says that every Muslim sinner will be eventually taken out of the hell. How do you reconcile between the two?
So this actually the hadith itself does not refer to all types of it does not refer to all types of punishment or all types of crimes. In fact, it is referring to those types of crimes for whom hell for a certain amount of time would become sufficient, and then that person will be taken out. But the hadith cannot overrule the Quran, and therefore it has to be interpreted in the way that it is referring to only those crimes for which there is a specific period of time of punishment. The Quran tells us that people who deny the prophets of God intentionally, for them there is eternal hell. Similarly, it tells us that people who kill Muslims intentionally, for them it is eternal hell. So this part of the Quran is something that is going to overrule the hadith. And what the hadith says, and if you collect all the narratives, what it says actually is that people who will suffer a particular punishment because of a particular crime, they will be taken out, because for them it was not eternal hell that they were condemned to. They were consigned to hell for a particular period of time.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, since we don't have Muslim slaves anymore, is our next alternative to pay charity or do sadaqah?
I just gave you this example that if we don't have slaves, then we can still have prisoners who are to be set free, but they don't have bail money. So there are several examples in which people they await to be liberated from prisons, set free from prisons, and the state at times has to give that money today. But as I said, that this could be equally good if a person is able to liberate a prisoner of war or a prisoner, any sort of prisoner who deserves to be set free, but he does not have the bail money to set himself free.
Thank you very much. Related to the topic of freeing a slave, how is freeing a slave a compensation to unintentional murder? A murderer is a murderer. The person who lost his life is irreplaceable for his family. Will the murderer not be punished in the hereafter after freeing the
Of course, I mean, that person is going to be punished in the hereafter as well. But this is like, I mean, a whole system in which you see slaves were dear to people, and when they were told to set free those slaves, it is as if they were said that they should give a valuable possession that meant a lot for them in charity or in the way of God. So it was like a fiscal or a economic penalty that was imposed on them. So it's not the case that, of course, that the murderer will go scot free in the hereafter. This is just saying that if he is forgiven for some reason, then that forgiveness is not enough. You must also pay a fine for that, and a form of that fine is that you set free a slave.
Thank you very much. Yes, Shaban Ansari, please go ahead.
यही वाली आयत है ना जो ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड जितने भी एक्सट्रीमिस्ट हैं इनको अपने मकासद के लिए इस्तेमाल करते हैं और उसको कहते हैं फ़ख़ुज़ूहुम वक़्तुलूहुम। और अभी भी एक साहब ने जो एक मजमे पे मासूम लोगों के कार चढ़ाई है, तो वो इन्हीं आयत को आउट ऑफ द कॉन्टेक्स्ट लेने की वजह से जो है वो अपने लिए ले लेते हैं कि ये हमारा काम है और आम मासूम लोगों के ऊपर। तो ये आयत जो है, इसलिए बहुत अफसोस होता है बार बार के लोग पता नहीं मुसलमान कब समझेंगे इन सारी चीजों को कि
So actually, these are not the precise verses, although they have this precise wordings. You'll find those verses in Surah Tawbah, in which it is said that فَقْتُلُ الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَيْثُ وَجِدتُّمُوهُم, that you kill these idolaters wherever you find them. So people actually first regard other people to be idolaters. They regard them to be apostates, and then they kill them. The verses that we are studying here, although they have a very similar structure and wording, but they are referring to the hypocrites. And they are referring to people who are not migrating in the times of the Prophet to Darul Islam, and they had ties with other people, with the Jews and with the disbelievers, and they were trying to create dissension and rebellion. They had adopted this rebellious attitude. So basically, these particular verses are not directly related to the one that you are saying or referring. The verses that you have in mind have a very similar structure, but they are actually found in Surah Tawbah.
अच्छा ठीक है, सही। अच्छा वो सूरह तौबा में है, ठीक है। अल्फाज उनके ऐसे ही है ना, फ़ख़ुज़ूहुम वक़्तुलूहुम।
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Akram Bhatti, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So, I don't know, these ayahs refer to the enemies of Islam, but these days, since there's no slavery, and some people say that somebody's gone to jail because he could not pay the fine, freeing him from jail is the same thing, is it? Does it apply there?
Correct. That is what I just said. That if a person has a penalty imposed on him in the form of either a bail or maybe some other bond, so by analogy, because slaves no longer exist, so if the same can be done, that would fulfill the purpose.
But this is my question was because here we are talking about the enemy of Islam. But if that these days a person could be in jail but could not be the enemy of Islam, could be another Muslim person.
The one that you would like to set free?
Yes, from jail.
Yes, of course. Anyone who is deserving to be set free, and he is under the jurisdiction of an Islamic state.
Okay.
Then, of course, that could be done.
Well, it does apply. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Salman Aziz, please go ahead.
Sir, may I humbly suggest and ask that should it be in the introduction of this particular surah, should we mention that it is doing the Imam Hujjat to the hypocrites?
To mention what?
in the introduction of this particular surah, should we
Uh-huh.
not mention that it is doing a partial, maybe, itmam hujjat to the hypocrites, as
I
they
mean,
are ordered to be.
it is, of course, yes, this is something that we did mention that the hypocrites are being taken to task in this surah. And when we had started this to study this surah, we had actually given this reference that a very major part of the surah will be discussing the subversive activities of the hypocrites and how they had become a threat to the Islamic State, and they had to be, they had to be dealt with in a very firm way. So they had become like enemies. And also, as I said, I mean, this is not exactly the punishment of Itmam al-Hujjah that is being mentioned here. As I said, it is more of a punishment of sedition, which means to create fitna in the society. And that is also punishable by high treason. High treason is something that's also punishable by death.
Salman Aziz, do you have a follow-up?
So thank you, sir. But your explanation of this sedition seems to be a bit similar to the definition of apostasy by Maulana Maududi, because he used to take apostasy in terms of state and then
So we are
make
not talking about
that.
the state. So I mean, for them, apostasy was a different thing. Apostasy meant that you have now, you are now no longer Muslims, and as not being a Muslim itself is a crime. So therefore, you have to be punished. So that is a different whole line of reasoning. What is being said here is that people who are rebellious against the state, I mean, this is an independent approach, I mean, which says that people who are rebellious against the state, if they don't give up their rebellion, then the only way to, put out their rebellion is to take them to task and of course to wage war against them and to kill them. So remember, these are rebels against the society, against the state. They are not apostates; they are rebels. So that is a different line of reasoning. And may I also suggest that if you would like to have more details, I think it might be more worthwhile for you if you could go through the tafsir of Ustaz Amin Islahi, who has explained how these hypocrites had started to behave in this way, in a more detailed way.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the topic-related questions.
Also, I'm not going to go any further today. So if you have any non-topic related questions, we can go ahead with them as well. And we would like to finish at 10 minutes before time at 9:20.
Okay. Our first non-topic related question asks, people are opting for gender selection through a medical procedure, whether they are going to have a baby boy or girl. Is it okay from a religious perspective? It seems like an interference in God's decision. Please give your opinion.
Well, I think that we cannot call it to be an interference in God's decision. It's like an advancement of science. And in particular, for example, if a family has a bunch of boys maybe, or one boy, and the parents would like the family to get completed by having one from each gender, like one boy and one girl, or in some other circumstances, there could be a situation in which because of tribal reasons, there could be other reasons as well, in which maybe people just want the male child. And similarly, there could be other instances in which they just want the female child. So I think this gives advantage to such situations. But what I would add here is that it should be monitored by the state. So anyone who would like to have the gender selection process going on for them should go through a process and present their pretext that why would they like this gender selection to take place. What is the reason behind that gender selection? I think if the judge is reasonably satisfied that this gender selection is because of any reason that is conducive to the family circumstances, then why should not it be taken advantage of?
Thank you very much. The next question asks, the last prophet had two dimensions to his personality. One was as a religious source and the other as a political head of the state of Medina. After his demise, did Abu Bakr also succeed him as a political successor only, or as a religious guide as well, but not as a source of religion? Because they're asking about the term Khalifatul Rasul. What does that entail? Just political successor?
Yes. It only entails political succession and not anything else. And that succession also was not something that was a nomination. It was something that was the opinion of the majority of the Muslims. And that is what the Quran has said, that the rulers of the Muslims has to be selected from the either through consensus or the rule of the majority or the opinion of the majority. So in this case, Abu Bakr was actually enjoying consensus of the Muslims. And Khalifatul Rasul actually refers to the fact that he was a successor in the political leadership arena only, in no other arena.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, what are the Sharia rulings regarding permanent surgical contraception?
I mean, again, as I said, there's no ruling of the Sharia because permanent surgical contraceptions, they are just a recent, maybe in the last 30 or 40 years, they have become a recent invention and a recent possibility. So scholars have to just look at these issues in the light and spirit of Islam. And I think that this could be a choice that should be given to the couple if they think that they would like to have that permanent contraceptive given to them so that in future they don't have any more children. I mean, it could be their choice. And then, of course, they would need to know that they might even regret it later on for some reason. So they have to make a choice in a very wise way. So I don't think that this is something that can in any way overrule or maybe go against any spirit of the directives of Islam. I think it should be given as a choice. I mean, just as you are given the choice that you have a temporary contraceptive, after all, that also stops any conception. So, and the only thing is that you now have a permanent situation at your hand. And if you know what you're doing and you've given it a deep thought, then I don't think that it is something that requires any intervention from the Sharia. It's like a personal decision.
Thank you very much. The next question asks, a last is a contract. Marriage is a contract. Nations have treaties. What is the wisdom behind Allah making important decisions around contracts?
I'm not sure if I got the question correct. I mean, a lust, of course, is a contract, and this is a contract, which is a contract is always a two-way contract. So what exactly is the question? I could not understand the question.
They're just asking, why is Allah making important decisions surrounding contracts? Or I guess, why does Allah promote contracts?
This is something that we have to understand, that it's like a word that we have honored from God. And the Qur'an calls religion to be misaq. So misaq means a covenant that God has taken, and people enter it as a party to that covenant. So it's giving us that feeling that you are now responsible. It's like a word that you have given to God. So that is why God makes it a point that whenever you honor something or whenever you follow something, it is basically you're honoring your word, you're honoring the covenant that you've made with God, so that you realize it's not something flimsy, not something frail and weak. It's something very important. So you've given your word for that. So that is why contracts and honoring those contracts has become an important thing.
Thank you very much. Any more non-topic related or topic related questions, please? Okay, just got one more. Can you please explain the difference between al-imamah and al-jama'ah? Yes.
Al-jama'ah means the political setup. It refers to a country or a governance. When you say al-jama'ah means for alaykum bil jama'ah, for example, this is a very common use in Arabic. It's also been used in hadith, the rules or follow the laws of the state. So al-jama'ah refers to the collectivity taken in the political sense.
And then what about al-imamah?
So al-imamah means leadership. That's a simple word for leadership. So one refers to leadership and the other refers to the Muslim collectivity taken as a whole.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Is it compulsory for women who miss their prayers because of menstruation every month to make up for it?
No, it's not. They are liable to make up for the fast that they missed because of menstruation. But regarding the prayers, we have been given this concession. The Almighty's Prophet has given this concession that they need not be made up.
Thank you very much. Salman Aziz, please go ahead.
सर कल जो गुफ्तगू थी मैं शायद समझ नहीं पाया था। आपने कहा था कि कुरान में ज़ाहिर एक तारीखी मवाद है और इसके अलावा दूसरा भी है, तो उनको अलग देखें। मैं ये जानना चाह रहा था कि बरनबास की जो इंजील है उसमें बरनबास से इंजील जो है, इंजील तो सारी वो है, हम ये समझते हैं कि कोई ऐसी किताब है जो कोई नाजिल हुई है वही के जरिए, तो क्या मैं बात समझ नहीं पा रहा था कि हजरत मसीह अलैहिस्सलाम जो है वो पहले बता के चले गए थे कि वो जो है मसलूब नहीं किए जाएंगे, क्योंकि बाद में अगर बरनबास इस चीज को बयान कर रहे हैं तो वो तो जाहिर है हदीस की तरह की चीज हो जाएगी। वो कोई
Correct.
वही वाली किताब होगी। और अगर वो कोई इंसान बयान कर रहा है तो मेरे ख्याल में फिर ईसाइयों का ज्यादा इसमें सही रीजन होगा कि हम बर्नबास की बात क्यों माने।
You see, whether they believe in the gospel of Barnabas or not, for them it has a different historical reason. I mean, you can read why they don't believe in the gospel of Barnabas. But as Muslims, what we were saying is that whatever the gospel of Barnabas portrays is so close to the Quran that it does give us this idea that when Barnabas was writing this gospel, some of it was written in the times of Jesus when he was alive, and maybe some part of it later, because that is a compilation and more of a biography. We find that this is something which was the truth as well. I mean, we know that he was not crucified, and that is what Barnabas actually recorded. So that is just a reference that we are making, that even the gospel that to us is the correct gospel. It gives us this version that it was not Jesus who was crucified, it was someone else, because the gospel of Barnabas tells us that it was Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples of Jesus, who was actually crucified. So it's not just that the gospel of Barnabas merely tells us that Jesus was not crucified. It actually tells us something more, and that is Judas was crucified in his place, and when he was being crucified, he was made to resemble Jesus, and Jesus was then actually, they thought that they were actually crucifying Jesus. So this is what was presented by the Gospel of Barnabas. So what you have to understand here is that one of the Gospels is saying something which is very, very close to the Quran.
I do understand that, sir. My question was that the gospel written is depicting the crucifixion of Jesus or otherwise is not part of the revealed knowledge. It is the
Of
recorded
course,
knowledge. You can say
that
otherwise we
yes,
can say
correct.
that all the Bible is revealed minus the portion that is depicting the death of Jesus.
Correct. Yes, correct. That was historical. That was something historical, which means that Barnabas had recorded some form of history, and because it's not just the Gospels are not just a record of the sayings of Jesus. What we are saying is that there is a biography compiled by a disciple that said something very similar to what the Quran is the Quran is depicting. So listen, remember, the Gospel of Barnabas also is a gospel in which you'll find history being intermingled with divine words of Jesus, as is the case with the rest of the gospels. So all the gospels are basically biographies in which you find hadith, so to speak, in which you find the words of Jesus being recorded as well. So if you go through these gospels, you'll find history being portrayed by the writers of those gospels, and at the same time the words of Jesus himself, which of course would have been divine.
So the main reason given by Barnabas is the same thing that we uh, have heard, that after 3 days of crucifixion, Jesus himself came and had supper. Was this the reason that he was not crucified, or something else? You would
I
please
mean, it
guide.
was. I mean, you can go through but it's a very small gospel. You can just go through it. All that I'm saying is that, I mean, there are more details to it that maybe I'm not fully remembering whether this happened or not. What you're just asking, but what is clearly stated here, there is that Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, he was made to look like Jesus, and the Jews thought that they were actually crucifying Jesus. And the rest, of course, we do find that he lived a normal life, and he was given a normal death.
Right, sir.
Thank you very much. Last question. Is khuruj made against the state or political leader?
Political leaders, you cannot have khuruj. Khuruj against the state would be high treason. You just cannot rebel against the state. That would be traitorship. It's against the people who are ruling the state. Remember?
Thank you very much. That was it for all the questions today, Dr. Saleem. Thank you for another wonderful session, and thanks to all the participants. Inshallah, we'll see you all again next week. And take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.